What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome to today's video. Today I'm going to be installing some coilovers to the VXR. I found them on eBay. Well, my friend of mine found them on eBay. James, nice one, mate. For really good money. They are a budget coilover, however they're not budget. So they're sort of like a mid-range coilover, but I'll show you them in a minute. So I'm going to get the car up in the air and start taking all my suspension off. I just wanted the front end to come down a little bit. I've always been happy with how the rear sits, but the front end I'm just never been quite happy with. I just feel like it needs to go down a little bit more. So let's make a start on fitting the suspension. So let's go. Right then, guys, these are suspension. They are AP coilovers. Now don't get this confused, this isn't the same brand as the AP brakes, it's a completely different company. As far as I'm aware, they're a German company. However, they are, like I said, they are a budget coilover, but sort of like a premium budget, if that makes sense. They're not as cheap as, I'd say, the Stance Plus ones are. But obviously not as expensive as like the KWs and Bilsteins and stuff like that. But they are in relatively good condition. Bought them off a guy called Lewis Caulfield. I think that's how I pronounce his name. Sorry, mate, if you're watching this, I've got your name wrong. But yeah, I'm really happy with them. I'm not going to mess around adjusting them for now. I've given them all the squirt down here with some WD-40 just to try and free up the adjuster, just in case I do have to move them around. But I'm just going to throw them on now as they are and to see where the height is. As I said, I don't want the car slammed, just want to bring the front down a little bit, and obviously now I can get the rears obviously sorted out then. Put the rears on and see how they, and obviously they're adjustable as well, so I can adjust the height of the rear as how I want it as well. So first thing I'll do, I'm just going to give you a rundown of how, if you want to move your suspension, especially on the front. Obviously it's really easy, but I'm going to walk you through it anyway, just in case you guys are a bit unsure how to do it. So obviously first thing you need to do is jack the car up, take the wheels off. Right guys, obviously when you jack your car up, take your wheels off. Always remember safety first, guys. Axle stands and then leave a jack underneath just in case. Too many times I've seen people jacking up their cars and doing work with just using the jack to have the car in the air. Always make sure you use axle stands for your own safety, guys, more than anything. So once you've done that, obviously it depends how you want to do it, but what you do, you need to take off your scuttle panel, like your tray. Scuttle panel, what is it called? Yeah, scuttle panel. Obviously pull the rubber off. You need to untake your wipers out, so pop these little caps off, undo the bolts that are on, the nuts that are holding the wipers on, take that off, and then once you've done that, you can pull this out, and this will give you access to the top bolt of the suspension strut. So obviously you need to take that off to pull the suspension strut out. So I'm going to take all this off now, and then I'm going to move down to undoing the bits underneath. So you can see it's all out now. The bolts that hold the wipers on are 13 mils, so have to be careful when you pop off the wipers that you don't lose these little washers that are underneath. So maybe when you're popping the wiper off, just put your hand over the spindle as it's popping off, so the washer doesn't come flying out. So now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take the drop link off, and then obviously I'm going to snip this out of the way and just unclip the brake line. Then I'm going to do these two bolts here and then move on from there. So hopefully once I've done these two bolts, obviously that one there, so it's 3 bolts, 1, 2 and 3, that one there, and obviously then the lower half of the suspension strut is free. So all you need to do then is to get that top bolt out. So just double check here. So drop link bolt, these 2 ones here, and then the suspension strut is free. Obviously once you've unclipped all these bits and pieces. Right then guys, everything's cracked now. Obviously I've unclipped this, the brake line's out. I've undone these 2 bolts here. They're both 18s, so you need an 18 spanner and a socket to hold the one end whilst you undo the other end. Maybe you want to put the socket on that. I'll put the socket on this end and use the spanner on here, but it's up to you if you can put the spanner on there and the socket on there. It's completely up to you. Obviously the drop link's out now. It was a 16 or a 17. Let's put this bolt back on, otherwise I'll lose it. It's always good practice to keep your bolts together, but bolts and nuts to put your nuts together so you don't lose them, so you know where everything goes. So literally now, all that's left now is this top bolt here. So it can be a bit of a pain because obviously this is in the way. It helps if you've got a rattle gun, because obviously when if you're trying to undo it with a socket, sometimes the spindle can move in the middle bit, so it can be a bit of a nightmare. But you're having to use, so I've seen people use what they use is a deep reach socket and use something on here to stop the spindle from turning as you're undoing the nut. But luckily my friend James is bringing his Ugga Dugga down, so we're going to Ugga Dugga that off, and then the suspension will be ready to be removed. Right guys, as you can see, the old suspension strut's out. James is just putting the new one in now, as you can see there. He's brought his Ugga Dugga down, so I managed to get this top part out quite easy with that on. So it's a case of reversing it now to put everything back together. Right then guys, all the suspension's on. As you can see, the arch gap has reduced massively compared to where it was. So we're going to move on to the back now. So obviously it looks like the car's nose diving at the moment because obviously the front's so much lower than the back. So we're going to move to the back now. Luckily, I didn't have to adjust anything on the suspension. It's just that's how it sits. So I'm happy with that. I'm happy enough to not have to worry about moving them around and stuff. But that's really, it seems okay to me. So yeah, happy. So let's move on to the back now. Guys, when you're doing the rear, what I always find the best way to do is jack up your rear beam and then use axle stands on your jacking ports on either side. So when you lower the jack down, the rear beam should drop enough for the springs to drop out of the seats. But obviously the wheels got to come off and everything as well, so it will drop lower than it would be with the wheels on. But yeah, so we're going to get the wheels off now and start removing the strut, and then we have to get the springs out. Right then guys, when you're undoing your rear strut, you're going to need to pull your arch on the back. So you've got the 2 bolts either side here, little 10 mils. Then obviously you can pull this out enough to get to those torques up there. So that should be able to, so you should be able to, once you're undone them, you need to undo the bottom bolt and then your rear strut will come out. So right then guys, obviously once you've got the rear strut out, obviously you need to take off this top bearing here. So it's a bolt on top of there. And obviously you just swap it over with the replacement one. Right then guys, suspension's all on. This is obviously the new ride height of the car. As you can see, I think it's, if you look at earlier videos of how the car did sit, you can see how it was really high in the front especially, but I'm really happy with it. Obviously I'm yet to take it out for a drive, so I have no idea how bumpy it's going to be, but I imagine it's going to be quite hard, but I'll find out in a bit. Well, that's it for today's video, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it as always. I'm sorry I didn't explain too much about the rear, however it was getting dark and I just wanted to get the car finished. But like I said, you need to jack the rear beam up and then axle stands underneath the jacking points, undo those top bolts that I showed you, then undo the bottom one at the bottom of the strut, and then lower the jack down. As you lower the rear beam down, the springs will fall out. Then it's literally reversal, and obviously swapping around the top mount fixing on the bearing on top of the strut. So I've took the car out for a drive. It drives all right. It's not as bumpy as I thought it'd be. I thought it'd be a really bumpy ride. It's a little bit more stiff, but not as bad as I thought it'd be considering it's coilovers. I've never really had coilovers before. This is sort of the first time, and I'm quite impressed by them considering it's like a cheap brand. Not cheap like I said, but it's still a cheap brand. But as always, if you enjoyed the video, hit the like button. If you're new to the channel, subscribe if you want to. I'm not too sure when the next video is going to be coming out, however, due to Christmas being around the corner, but however, I will always try and keep the content running as best I can. So as always, I'll see you on the next one.